Where do you work? And what are the main responsibilities of your position?
I'm currently an associate professor and the graduate director for the PhD program at the University of Miami in the Miami Herbert Business School. And my primary day-to-day responsibilities are to teach classes, both at the graduate and the undergraduate level. I also, being in charge of the graduate program, have to monitor and mentor our graduate students, the incoming students who are just there getting their feet wet, all the way up to the students who are finalizing their dissertation. And I engage in various other service activities on the university. And I'm also, required to do research to, promote our university as a, leading place of academic scholarship. So, lots to do.
Yes, lots of stuff.
Lots to do.
Our next question is, how did you become interested in this field?
Well, it's interesting. When I was at NAS, I was a math major. I didn't know really too much about economics. And it turns out that there's a lot of applied mathematical concepts that sort of run hand in hand with economics. And at the end of my sophomore year, I had taken a vast majority of my math courses and wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And I had just taken an internship at Mercer in downtown Rochester, which is an actuary firm. And part of becoming certified to be an actuary is taking a bunch of exams. One of those exams happened to be economics. And talking with my academic advisor, it made sense to sort of go down the path of econ as a dual major to sort of help me with becoming an actuary. And lo and behold, I ended up liking that more than just doing mathematics. And by the end of my time at NAS, I decided that I think continuing my education in economics was, more of interest to me than being an actuary. And that's what kind of sold it for me.
What was your area of study at Nazareth, which you talked about a little bit, and how do you connect your major with your current job position?
Well, definitely was math. I came in, I knew right away as a freshman I wanted to be a math major. I was involved in all things math at NAS, the math club and the math modeling team, all that good stuff. In terms of economics is really, it's heavily entrenched in mathematics. And so it was kind of just a natural fit. I mean, if you're going to go to grad school and in sort of any of the applied sciences, having a background in mathematics is very useful. It could be in ecology, it could be in sociology, it could be in political science, it could be in statistics, data analysis. If you have a solid background in math, it's just going to give you an additional leg up over other individuals. It's not necessarily going to be the defining thing, but it certainly helps. So, yes.
Sure. And after you went to school at NAS, did you see yourself becoming a professor at all?
Oh, I don't know that when I first got to Binghamton, where I got my PhD, that I had that in mind. I just kind of had decided I wanted to keep learning, and a higher level degree seemed the best way to do that. And in the course of the first few years there, I don't think I'd ever envisioned myself being a teacher or public speaking or anything of that nature. And it just kind of evolved sort of slowly but surely in the first few years that I was there. So I don't know. I never really thought of myself as a teacher. I even have a hard time now seeing myself as a teacher, but certainly back then, there's no way that any of my classmates or fellow alumni would ever have sort of pegged me as being a teacher. That's for sure.
But now you're loving it. So that's great.
No, I love being a teacher now. I love my job. I wouldn't even call it a job. I'd call it a career. I don't dread going to work. I get to meet new people all the time, go to different places, either virtually or, prior to all this.
Yes.
So yeah, I got to do all of that, and I still get to do all of that, and it's a lot of fun and I enjoy it. But, at that age, 21, 22, 23, when I first got to Binghamton, I don't know that I had ever thought of being a professor. I don't think that's really what I envisioned myself doing. So,
Yeah.
happens for a lot of people. They just when you're young, you don't necessarily know what you want to do, and more power to the people that do.
Sure.
Mhm.
The next question is, what skills have you gained from your education at Nazareth that have prepared you for your current role?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the best part about being at NAS is it's a liberal arts school, so you have your sort of core set of courses that you have to take, English courses and science courses and language courses and math courses, even if you're not a math major. And I think that's actually really beneficial because it sort of forces you, or doesn't force you, but it opens you up to just various ways of thinking. And as you progress in your life, you kind of become entrenched in a particular way of thinking. And I can always resort back to various courses that I had at NAS where we would discuss things that weren't necessarily my worldview, but you learn how to accept that. And I think at a lot of schools, like for instance, even at Miami Herbert Business School, you get a degree there. You're not really taking a lot of courses outside of the business school, so it's not clear how exposed you are to various schools of thought in things, unless you go and seek it yourself, of course. But at NAS, it's sort of just, it's part of the curriculum. And I think it's something that most liberal arts schools really offer. And, NAS is exceptional at it. So that's what I always sort of can draw back on. At least once or twice a week, I can always remember something I read at NAS or something that somebody said at NAS that, just helps me out in terms of keeping me grounded and not always thinking I'm right and other people are incorrect. So
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to our last question. And like, if people don't exactly have all the pieces together, the liberal arts education kind of opens your mind and helps you figure out like what you like and what you don't like. And I know
exactly.
you mentioned before that some of your most memorable courses were the core classes, not necessarily your major classes. So
Yeah, I couldn't probably tell you too much about each specific math class that I took at NAS, but I can very vividly remember Eastern religion and, an English class with Dr. Madigan, and the French class and the French house that's hopefully still there on NAS campus. And,
yeah.
I took a science fiction class, a night class where, we're reading all kinds of really crazy things. And, those are the courses that I can, still pop out. I can remember everyone was terrified of the first physics class. I can't even remember the guy's name who was teaching it, but, everyone was terrified of that course because the guy just had no sort of concern for the students, grade well-being. So, I can still remember all of that stuff quite vividly. Can't remember most of the teachers' names though, of course. So I don't know what that says, but
Well, memorable experiences, that's the important thing.
that's right.
So at Nazareth, we have the Spark Grant for undergraduate students, as well as other grant opportunities for graduate students. Would you like to talk about some of the grants you received in the past, as well as any tips and tricks for writing them?
Sure. So, a lot of academic work, depending on the field that you're in, is sort of contingent on getting external funding, whether it's for purchasing data or purchasing equipment or travel to a particular place to conduct your studies. It's one of the, sort of the underlying pieces of being able to do good research is finding, other agencies that, see your vision, see your passion for a particular academic endeavor that you have, and they'll fund it. I didn't know actually too much about it when I was in grad school, but once I graduated, my first job was in the Ag and Life Sciences department at Virginia Tech, and there a lot of the research, I'd say the vast majority of it is through sort of external funding. And very quickly when I got there, I was working on a grant that was funded or that was provided through the Environmental Protection Agency, which if you do anything sort of related to issues related to clean water, clean air, things of this nature, odds are that you'll at some point circle back to the EPA. And so over the course of my 15 years having my PhD, I've received several internal and external grants, either through the university that I've been at here at UM or at Virginia Tech, and also through various funding agencies, the EPA, of course, National Institute of Health, NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration. I would say the best thing to do when you apply for a grant is just to be sort of very precise in terms of why you need funding and what you're going to do with it. It's somebody else's money, and you don't really want to kind of beat around the bush, so to speak. You want to get right to the point of what it is you're going to do and what you're kind of anticipating this money is going to help you do, and sort of set up a very clear line of sight from getting the money to getting the the final result. So that's the best advice I could give. I don't know that that's really any advice at all, but that's the
No,
best I
that's
could
great
give.
advice. Be specific.
Be specific. Yeah.
What is your most proud moment on the job?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question.
Or one of them?
I think it was a few years. I can't remember the year. I think it was in 2013. So every year they have a list of the business school. They have sort of awards for researcher of the year and staff member of the year, and various teaching awards and things of this nature. And I don't pay much attention to those things. I never attended them. And I remember, I think it was 2013. My department head was asking me if I was going to go, which was very bizarre because he never asks anyone if they're going to go. And I told him, no, I'm not going to go. And he says, well, I think you should go. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to go. I have more important things to do. And he's like, no, I really think you should go. And eventually it dawned on me that the reason he was asking me to go is because I must have been like nominated for something. So I acquiesced and I went, and then lo and behold, I won. And it turns out that there was a student that I had met when I first got to who took one of the very first courses that I taught, that just, I guess he had been, sort of influenced by that course, and it had an impact on him, and he had nominated me for, a teaching award. And then I subsequently won. So I think I was proud of that because I wasn't really trying to win any awards. And yet it was something that, it's always nice when your hard work pays off. But, I've had lots of good memories. I always feel good whenever any of the students in the PhD program graduate and successfully defend their dissertation and find a job. I always feel good when undergrads are graduating and they're applying to grad school and they get in. I can kind of relate to that feeling from when I was at NAS. So I have lots of moments, but that's kind of one that sticks out because it was really completely, for me at least, unexpected.
Yeah, I love like the hint, like, yeah, you
Yeah.
won. Like, you
I'm
should
a little
go.
dense, so it took him probably 5 emails before it finally, got his point across.
Okay, so what are some challenges you face?
There's lots of challenges we face. So, getting a PhD in pretty much any field, it's not econ specific. In any field, it's actually it's a very higher level academics is very competitive in terms of publishing and getting grants and things of this nature. And at a school like Miami that is sort of internationally recognized, there's fierce competition for publishing your papers with other schools that are also internationally recognized. And so, it's hard to publish on a consistent basis in top journals in your field, be it economics or statistics or mathematics or sociology or biology or any field really. If you're trying to sort of publish your research in top journals, it turns out to be surprisingly more competitive than probably a layperson might imagine. And so that's always an ongoing challenge, is trying to get your stuff through the reviewing process and get it published in a timely manner in good journals that bring sort of notoriety and recognition to yourself and your department and your university. So that's always a challenge. And on the teaching side of things, it's a challenge to teach the same material all the time, semester after semester, and make it so that every time can be new, so that the students feel like you're really teaching to them and not just running through a series of notes that you have. And it doesn't really matter if they're there or not. As a teacher, that's always a challenge that I look forward to, is try to make things interesting to that particular group of students so that they feel like I'm there and I'm teaching to them, and I'm not just sort of, well, this is how I get my paycheck and I'm just putting some stuff up on the board for you, and you do what you want with it. So
It sounds like you definitely do make an impact on your students, though, especially with your award and things like
well, I
that.
try. You never know. You have to talk to them. We ought to talk to them.
Okay, the next question is what experiences at NAS and outside of NAS have helped you get where you are today?
Well, you know, when I was at NAS, I think one of the big things that really helped me, and I mean, I'd be different for everybody, but having the internship for 2 years at Mercer really helped me a lot. It just kind of helped get me in the mode of being able to work and be a student and sort of understanding that once I graduate, there's going to be this whole new life that's going to be dramatically different than being at college anywhere, NAS and other places. And so that really helped. And I mean, obviously being at NAS and then finding that internship through the math club was extremely rewarding. My roommate, he's still my best friend, Jared, he already had a job. I remember when we started, you know, we were roommates for 3 years and he had already had a job. And so I can always just remember him leaving on the weekends and going and working. And so, you know, having some kind of employment wherever it is while you're in college, I think keeps you sort of grounded so that, yeah, you're enjoying college, you're having fun, you're being a young adult and enjoying those years, which you most likely will never, ever get back. Speaking from somebody who's in their 40s now. But at the same time, you know, you have a long life ahead of you and you got to make sure you're also prepared for that as well. And so having some type of employment is, be it on campus or be it off campus, is a useful, you know, it's a useful skill to start working on right away, I think.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, afterwards, I don't do much, you know, I do my job and I try to do really good at my job and I try to be a good person and that's about it. So not much else to say there.
Okay, the next question is what are some projects that you have recently been working on? And I know there are probably a lot.
Well, I had a recent op-ed that was published with one of my colleagues, Pamela Geller, here in the anthropology department that appeared in the New York Times that's sort of spun off from a lot of the internal grant work that we've done related to sort of the proliferation of plastics in the last 20 to 30 years. A lot of this actually got based off of some early research that was done by another one of our colleagues here that found microplastics, which are these tiny little shreds of plastic that come off as plastic starts to deteriorate. And being down here in Miami, you're always aware of like all things ocean related, and so microplastics are starting to show up in the food chain for fish. And naturally, if you eat fish and fish have microplastics, then you're going to have microplastics. And so this sort of spawned a big interest for us in sort of why is plastic so prevalent and what are the types of things that we can think of potentially doing to mitigate these issues. And there's not really any one smoking gun solution, but that's something that I've been working on the last few years that sort of, at least, that got spun off into that. And then sort of other things that I'm working on. I'm very interested in working on types of empirical problems related to what we might consider to be variables which are not measured correctly. So for instance, we might think of something, let's say, that's quite controversial like COVID, and we want to know how many people are infected with this virus. And, in this case here, the numbers that are reported are most likely to be what's called an undercount, in that the only people who are really being represented in the data are those that have actually gone out and gotten a test, and that test has come back and said, yes, you have COVID. If you have COVID and you're not getting tested, there's no way that anyone's going to know this. And so this is a classic example of an undercount. A different example of an undercount might be asking somebody how many hours of TV you watch. And in general, if you watch very little TV, it's likely that you understand and recognize that you watch very little TV. But if you watch lots of TV, you're probably likely to undercount it and not say you watch as much. Or it could be you answer on a survey, you might say, how much do you drink during a week? And you're kind of shy about really admitting that, you have a 6-pack a night. And so you only report that you have 1 beer a night. So there's all kinds of variables that have these undercounts, and there's some actually that have overcounts. And this area of in the social sciences, economics in general is very interesting, because when you have variables like this, it can really cause lots of problems for how you think about measuring things and understanding things relative to if something had been measured quite accurately. And so I've been spending a lot of time working on this. And in fact, the reason I brought up COVID is because I have a paper that it actually applies this directly to COVID. And it finds out, at least if you look worldwide, you find significant undercounting in COVID, both COVID cases and deaths. And it's a slightly different approach to, let's say, standard epidemiological models. So yes.
Yeah,
So
that's
those are some of
awesome.
the things I'm working on
And
at
I
the
think
moment.
it's important for like the Nazareth community to note that when I was thinking of economics, I wasn't thinking of the environmental tie it has and the health tie that it has. So it's everywhere. And I just think that's so interesting, all the work that you're doing.
Well, I would say to anybody that's kind of looks at econ sort of in this bland way, is that economics at its core, at least if you're going in the microeconomic route, is really all about incentives. And when I teach here at UM, I tell students the same thing: is that you might find economics to be very boring, and that's fine, but it anything that can be sort of connected back to how people behave in the face of incentives really falls under the umbrella of economics. So it could be something as simple as an incentive to go fast or slow on the road when you're speeding, right? If you know that you're not going to get caught, you're most likely to be speeding. And there's this, like the rule of seven, right? If you go 7 miles over the speed limit, I don't know how it is in New York, but down in Florida, that seems to be right around the sweet spot. But
Yeah.
that's really an incentive. There's an incentive in place that, or in this case, a disincentive, whereby, government actors put on constraints on economic consumers, and you respond to those types of things. And it could be anything: the environment, health, taxes, the more mundane stuff, trade, those types of things. But on the job, how hard you work at your job, all kinds of things they all boil down to incentives. Everything is sort of, at least if you're an economist, that's how you think about things. You think about things through the lens of incentives. And as I tell my students, or really anybody that wants to know more about economics, it's, you can kind of drive the behavior you want from anybody simply by aligning the incentives correctly, right? If you have the right incentive in place, you'll get people to do pretty much exactly what you want them to do. You just have to find the right incentive. And a lot of times when you see people making bad choices, it's not that they're malignant actors or they're not smart or whatever. It's usually that you just don't have the right incentives in place. And if you could fix that, you'd fix a lot more problems. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of problems where finding the right incentive is difficult, if not impossible. So,
Yeah. Okay, we're on our last question.
sure.
What advice would you give to a current member of the Nazareth community?
Well, I mean, if it was a student, I would just tell them that, they're in a good spot. NAS is a great school. It's small, which at the time of my life when I was there, I really like it. I'm at UM now. UM is a fairly large university. But at the time where I was, when I was, 18, 19, 20, I wanted a smaller community, and NAS was perfect for me. It's, it's in a good spot. I still miss upstate New York and Rochester. So, you're in a good spot, work hard, and, that degree should pay off in ways that you probably can't even fathom in your current stage.
Yeah.